Hello and welcome. My name's George, and my channel is all about helping you get the most out of Logic Pro so that you can record and produce your best music in your home studio. Today, we're going to be checking out the Acasis M4 Mac Mini dock. If you've seen a few of my previous videos, I recently upgraded my studio computer to an M4 Mac Mini, and I was running into a few storage issues with my audio libraries for one, and also the lack of USB-A ports was a bit of a problem for me. So I've been exploring the different options for the M4 Mac Mini, and Acasis was gracious enough to send me a copy of the M4 Mac Mini Workstation. So let's check it out and see how it all works out. So as I mentioned in my Mac Mini review video, I was running into some storage issues with the Mac Mini. I did upgrade the internal drive to 2 terabytes, but even then I was running out of space for my software libraries, mainly Native Instruments Complete, for example, which I'd showed also that comes to 1.1 terabytes on its own. So if you have that and a couple other bigger libraries, then you've already kind of taken up a 2 terabyte drive. So that was the first issue I ran into. And the next was just kind of expanding the ports of the Mac Mini. Mac Mini comes with USB-C and Thunderbolt ports. And to be honest, I don't really use any of those ports at the moment. All my peripherals are USB-A. My audio interface is USB-A. My MIDI keyboard is USB-A. My typing keyboard is USB-A. I have an iLock that's USB-A. And that was all fine using a hub that I bought, but it'd be nice to kind of clean up this setup a little bit. As you can see, this is what my Mac Mini looks like right now. It's a bit of a mess with cables everywhere. So I'm hoping we can kind of clean this up a little bit, as well as add some storage. So let's start by opening up the unit. So this is the box right here. That's what it looks like. Let's go ahead and open this up. So box with, I'm going to assume, cables and things. Okay, and here's the unit itself. And then just some more foam in the bottom of the box there. So I'll just put this aside for now. So here we go. So here is the unit. It's very sturdy. Seems like solid aluminum. Definitely nothing flimsy here at all. So definitely solid build, looks like. Let's just take a look at what we got in here. So we got our instruction manual. Comes with a screwdriver, which is nice. Our Thunderbolt cable for connecting the dock to the Mac Mini. Power cable for the unit. And some heat pads for the SSDs that we'll be installing. So before I throw my Mac Mini in here, I'll just kind of go over what we've got. So we've got on the top an SD card reader and a micro SD card reader. So that's handy because we don't have that on the Mac Mini, especially for anyone doing videos like this. You can pop in your SD cards, or, if you have photos that you want to dump quickly on your Mac Mini, that's a nice touch there. Then we've got 3 USB-A ports on the front. And as I mentioned, that's something I was missing, is these USB-A ports. All we had was USB-C and Thunderbolt on the Mac Mini. So that's going to clean things up for me a lot. And then we also have 2 display ports so that we can hook up some additional displays if we want. And then this slot here will hook up to our Mac Mini, and the one on the bottom to connect power for the unit. Now, just a quick note on powering this thing. So it does come with a power cable that plugs in here. Most reviews that I've seen, most people don't bother using the power supply, and they say it works just fine being powered by the Mac Mini through the Thunderbolt. I haven't tried it myself yet, but I'm inclined just to use the power. There's no kind of downside to using it, apart from, if portability, it's one cable you have to unplug. But it'll really depend on what you have plugged in to these USB ports and if you're using the dual monitors or not. The more things you have plugged in and the more power hungry things like hard drives, for example, that aren't powered, those are going to tax this a little bit more. And if there's not additional power, then some things might start dropping out. So for me, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to go ahead and plug the power in because there's no real reason not to, in my opinion. And then over here, we have 2 slots for M2 SSD drives, which I'll be installing shortly. Okay, so to load in the Mac Mini, we're first going to undo the 4 screws at the bottom here. That opens up like so. Now we want to line up the Mac Mini's power button with the power button on the Acasis unit right there. So I'll make sure that that lines up like so. Put that in slowly so we don't scratch anything, but it's actually nice and padded, so nothing was kind of rubbing as I was putting that in, which is great. And let's go ahead and close this back up now. Cool. Now that's all installed in there. I'd say it looks pretty great. Now let's go ahead and install our external drive to this as well. So we just need to unscrew this one screw right here. Remove that plate. I'll grab our hard drive. We've got the 990 Evo Plus, 4 terabytes. So I'll just place this on a bit of an angle here. Push that in. And then push down. Then we'll got these little rubber locking pin things, and we'll just put that in place. Now that the hard drive's installed, we're going to add the heat pad to it that comes with the kit. So these little pads right here, comes with 3 of them. So we'll just remove that and place this right on top. And there we go. Now let's close it back up. Next, let's plug in all our peripherals and see how that cleans up our setup. And then we'll fire it up and see how everything's working. So I'll start with the Thunderbolt cable. So I'll just go from there. Might as well go into the top slot right there. Plug in my monitor next. Got our power cable for the Mac Mini. This will be the power for the Workstation dock. Now let's plug in everything that's USB-A on the front. So I've got my iLock, I've got my MIDI keyboard, and I've got my typing keyboard and mouse. So those 3 fill up the 3 USB-A slots, but I've actually got a couple other things that are USB-A as well, such as my audio interface, which I'm using to record right now. So I won't be able to swap that over until I stop the recording. But for that, I got these little adapters here going from USB-A to USB-C. So I'll use the adapter and then use the remaining USB-C slots for those. So I'll just stop the recording and then boot up the Mac Mini. So I've got the unit fired up now, and here you can see what it looks like with everything plugged in. So it definitely cleaned things up a lot. Obviously, this is still loaded with everything, but I was able to plug everything in without any additional hubs. So that's awesome. And I've got two USB-C ports still available on the front for anything else that I need. So from an aesthetics point of view, I'm really happy with how this is going right now. Now let's run it through some tests. The first thing that I want to check is the Wi-Fi, because that's one thing that I kind of came across when I was looking into different options. Is some people complained that some of these Mac Mini docks, not specifically this one, but just in general, that it would affect the Wi-Fi signal. So I did a little speed test with the Mac Mini beforehand. And every time I did the test, the results changed quite a bit. So I don't know if that something with my own internet connection or something going on in the area. But so that made it tough to compare with it in the dock. But let's just check it in the dock right now to see if there's any substantial drop. So I'm still getting good speeds right now. So I don't think this dock has any drastic effect to the Wi-Fi. I'm still getting really fast speeds, as you can see. Now, before we do our speed test on our new external drive, let's just have a quick chat about hard drives. This enclosure supports two M2 drives up to a total of 16 terabytes. So you can have 8 terabytes in each drive. Now we'll do our own speed test in a moment, but with a single drive, you can expect speeds around 1600 megabytes per second. If you have two M2 drives and you're using RAID 0, and we'll talk about RAID in a second, you can expect speeds around 2800 megabytes per second. So in saying that, you don't need to go out and buy the most expensive drives simply because you're not going to get the full speed that those drives offer. Even though 1600 and 2800 megabytes per second, those are great and fast speeds and will be perfect for our needs. But some of the more expensive drives will go up to 7,000 megabytes per second, for example. I would recommend, however, to stick to a reputable brand, Samsung being one brand that's known for having high quality and fast drives. They can also be kind of the more expensive drives. And Western Digital, on the other hand, they offer some cheaper drives, but I've always had great success with Western Digital when it comes to reliability. I haven't had any problems with any Western Digital drives that I've had over the years. I actually ended up going with the Samsung 990 Evo Plus, and at the time when I purchased it, it was on sale and it was actually cheaper than the Western Digital. Otherwise, I would have just gone with the Western Digital because it would have given me the max speeds for this unit anyways. So personally, I would just pick between Samsung and Western Digital and get whatever drive is on sale. I ended up going for a 4 terabyte drive, but as I mentioned, you can get up to an 8 terabyte drive and up to two 8 terabyte drives. So all my sample libraries are going to live on that 4 terabyte drive, and then all my logic projects and system stuff will remain on my 2 terabyte internal drive. So that'll be a total of 6 terabytes, which should be more than enough for me. Any kind of archival stuff, like some old projects from years ago, or any kind of video footage that I'm not using anymore, I'll just move those off to some external drives and just keep those stored away, since that's not something that I'm going to be accessing on a daily basis. Now, with all that said, let's see what kind of drive speeds we're getting. So I'm using the Blackmagic Design disk speed test to run this, and let's see what kind of numbers we're getting. So pretty good. So we're kind of in that 1400 megabytes per second range for rate speed, which is pretty good. When I ran this same test on my 2019 MacBook Pro, I was getting similar speeds to this. So this compares to similar speeds on an Intel-based machine. Now, just for show, let's compare it with the internal speed on the M4 Mac Mini. So you can see the internal drive is definitely faster, but for most applications, that 1400 megabytes per second is going to be totally fine. I have no worries at all that it's going to be fast enough for my software libraries. And just one last comparable as far as drive speed goes. One popular external drive is the Samsung SSD T7. And we just take a look at the max speeds on this drive. Here we have a read speed of 1050 megabytes per second and a read speed of 1000. So with the Acasis, we've passed those numbers. So I'm really happy with the speed we're getting, and this is going to suit my needs just fine. Now, if performance and speed is really what you're after, then we can run this in RAID mode to get some additional speed. Now, in order to do this, you need 2 drives installed. I've only got the one, so I won't be able to perform the actual speed test, but I can show you how you would go about setting it up. So you're going to go into Disk Utility, and you go up to File, and then RAID Assistant. And then here you can see the different types of RAID mode we have. So RAID 0, that's what's going to give us those increased speeds. So it takes our 2 drives and combines it into one, and it's writing to both drives at the same time. So we get faster overall drive speeds. So in this mode, you can expect to get speeds around 2800 megabytes per second, which would be basically the same as the internal drive in the M4 Mac Mini. The other option is RAID 1, and this won't actually give you any additional speed. It'll just make an exact copy of both drives. So if you're concerned about losing any data and you want to make sure that it gets backed up to both drives, well, then you can select RAID 1. Now let's just see how quickly I can copy over all my audio libraries from my internal drive to my new external drive. So this is 1.65 terabytes of software libraries. So it's estimating it at 22 minutes, which previously when I copied this over from a non-SSD external drive, it took hours and hours. So this is quite a bit faster than that. So now that I finally feel like I've got my Mac Mini dialed in to where I want it, why don't we do a little recap of what this had cost me and if you wanted to get a similar setup. So I started with the Mac Mini. I did upgrade to 24 gigs of RAM, but as I mentioned in my previous video, I think for most people, 16 gigabytes be just fine. I opted for the 24 mainly for the tutorial videos like this that I do. And then for storage, I stuck with 256 of storage, and you'll see why in a moment. So for the Mac Mini, that's $799. I then upgraded the internal storage for $320. I've got a separate video on this if you're interested. And then we've added the Acasis M4 workstation. That's going for $179. And then we loaded that with one of these 4 terabyte drives, which is currently going for $249.95. So for this setup, we're looking at $1,547.95 for M4 Mac Mini with 6 terabytes of usable space. Now, simply upgrading through Apple to 2 terabytes, we're looking at more than what this option would get you. And if we're looking at the Mac Studio, well, we're already starting at $19.99 being the cheapest model. So personally, I think this is a great way to go. And this Acasis M4 workstation just kind of ties it all together real nice and, just kind of completes it and makes it a real studio workhorse. Now, if you are interested in this Acasis M4 workstation for yourself, I do have a link in the description below. And just for full transparency, this is an affiliate link. So if you do purchase using that link, I do get a small commission. But I will add that I don't endorse anything that I don't personally use myself. And I think this is a great addition to my studio. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. And if you want to improve your workflow in Logic Pro, don't forget to download my free Ultimate Logic Pro Starter Pack. This includes my Logic Pro hotkey cheat sheet, my audio recording guide, my gear guide, my mixing guide, and my Logic Pro session templates. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.